Welcome, welcome. This is
Welcome.
episode 12 of the Plus Sides podcast. How is everybody
Yay.
doing?
Good,
Doing
good.
great.
Good, good.
Awesome.
As you
How
can
is
tell,
everyone?
we do not have Kat with us tonight, but that's
No.
because she's in France.
Yeah.
And so we have our special guest, Rachel. She is our community special
Yay.
host. We also have a community guest as well as an endocrinologist, Dr. Young, who's going to be with us too.
Mhm.
The episode is the spectrum of insulin resistance and endocrine therapy. So we're going to talk a lot about that, as well as hear Dave, a member of our community, his story, our community
Yes.
story. He goes by Man on the Mounjaro. So if you don't follow him on YouTube, please do, but we'll bring him on in a few minutes. But
Yes.
yeah, so if this is your first time listening, because maybe this is an episode that you happen to it resonates with you and you haven't heard our show before. My name is Kim and I am on Wegovy. I've taken a couple of these medications over the past year. I've lost 62 pounds.
Woo.
I've been quite a stall lately, but I just broke it. So I'm feeling good about that. I have a lot of, I always say it wrong, comorbidities, but everybody says comorbidities. I don't know. It's one of those that really go with, I would say, obesity. And I have had obesity my whole life, as long as I can remember. And I had an eating disorder at the age of 8. I have not had any issues with binge eating in almost a year now. It's amazing. The medication has completely changed my life and my lifestyle. And I joined this amazing TikTok community, and this podcast came out of that community. And the content is driven by people in our community, as well as doctors that are in our community as well. So
Yes.
that's the gist of what the Plus Sides is about. And that's who I am. So, Janine, hey.
Hey.
For people who are just tuning in, can you give your spiel?
Oh, yes. Okay. So my spiel is, if you don't know, I am Janine. I'm on Mounjaro. I'm on TikTok as JT, the Mounjaro flight attendant. The Janine, because the world can only take one of me. So I don't know what would happen if it were two, but I'm currently on Mounjaro. I started my journey in January of 2023. I have an autoimmune disease of Sjogren's syndrome, as well as type 2 diabetes, as well as obesity. So I know some people are like, no way, you don't suffer from obesity. Yes, I do. It's a chronic disease, and it deserves to be treated as such. And I found a great community on TikTok, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Love it. Hey, Janine,
Awesome.
I just noticed we're wearing
Oh,
similar shirts.
yes.
Oh, for those
Oh,
listening, we have a
yeah.
merch store.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do. You
Yeah,
can
we
go from
do.
our website and choose shop. And we now have plus sides gear, which helps keep the light on for the plus sides.
Yes.
So if you are not there, go there.
Yes.
Because
Right
it will
now.
right now, do it right now. But we are wearing our gear tonight. So Kat is in France, as I mentioned, and she will be doing butt stuff there. So she'll have some TikTok videos about her butt stuff in France.
Yes.
And so you won't get your Manjaro butt. And then she also mentioned something about stairs last time we talked. It was like Odyssey, some sort of stairs or Homer's
Yes.
Odyssey or something. And she said she was going to do butt stuff with Homer, which we thought was hilarious. So if you
Yes.
aren't following Kat at Kat Carter 7 on TikTok, there will be lots of butt things. So
A ton.
make sure you go there. Now
Highly
moving on
exciting.
from all of the silly things. Hey, Rach, how's it going?
Rachel.
Hi.
Welcome
We
back to
love
the plus
Rachel.
sides. We're so
Thanks.
glad to have you filling for Kat today.
I'm excited to be back.
Cool. So for
Yay.
those who do not know you or follow you, you can tell us how to follow you on TikTok and then tell us a little bit about you. We need your spiel too.
Sure. So
Yeah.
I am at Love Nest Conversation on TikTok, and very similar to your story, Kim. I have been obese basically my entire life, and it's been a complete struggle. And I now know that I've had undiagnosed ADHD since I was 8 years old. I've had BED since I was 8 years old. and PCOS and infertility and all the lovely things that come along with all of this insulin
Yeah.
resistance. And this medication has been life-changing. And for, so many of us, that is why we talk about it. That is why we advocate, because if you don't know the experience, it's a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, and to be free of that and to feel relief for the first time in your life, you want to scream it from the rooftops. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yes. So something that we do touch a lot on in our community is basically having a lot of like she said, like trauma around these things. Oh, we just lost Rachel.
Me?
Oh no, we just lost her name. Oh no, we didn't lose Rachel. They got confused because the box moved around. It's cool. I can edit. Or not. But yeah, something that we do talk about a lot is around like the different trauma and people having different experiences, so I think it's important that we do share those. And a lot of us, when we really wanted to get this podcast going, would see people that were so amazed, like Rachel's talking about, like how this has changed. No, I don't know about you, but I never once in my life, one, thought there was a medication that could help me, and two, thought that it would change my life this much. Amazed at what it has been able to do. And you do want to scream about it. And the thing is that the media has their own agenda. And they have their own narrative that they like to spin accordingly, which is why we saw in the media before Weight Watchers decided to get in the Ozempic business. It was all about what we were doing about taking things away from other people that maybe had a more deserving disease. Like it was very much like that. And then once Weight Watchers was like, hey, maybe there's something to this. maybe there is this insulin resistance spectrum and people are on different levels of it and we can help in different ways, and then when they did, now the whole thing has been changed. That said, still to this day, the testimonials are blurred out, cut, all the things.
Oh yeah.
Whatever, narrative they want to push at the time. So what we do on our show is we allow people to have a moment of explaining their story uncut, so that they can feel like their story, which is very important, and that their life is heard. So without further ado, I will introduce Dave, who is the man on the Mounjaro.
Yes.
Hi, how are you, Dave? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, ladies. Am I coming in all right? Because my screen is frozen.
Yeah, actually, you're a little like your mouth doesn't match your words, but I can hear you really well.
So I'm like a really bad film with subtitles.
I mean, sure, yeah. Not really bad. Like
maybe.
It's dubbed okay-ish. Like I wouldn't really be able to notice if you weren't like, hey, look.
Okay. Well, as long as it's tolerable on your end. If it's not, I can bump out and bump back in. But I really appreciate you having me on the podcast. This is exciting. I love what you're doing here. I love what you stand for. I love this idea of what I love the idea of in general is taking the stigma out of the word obesity. I have used it freely in my vernacular with people who I'm describing my channel with. I use it freely on my channel and I use it without shame. It is a chronic condition and it is broken biology. And that is why I became such a big fan of Mounjaro, GLP-1s in general. And that was really the impetus behind me starting my channel. So it's exciting to meet like-minded people.
Yes. Well, you have met us. So
here we are.
We're glad to connect with you. Please feel free to just tell us your story, like in your own words, how things got started, what it's been like for you, all of those things. Because I promise there's someone out there, Dave, and I know you've probably realized this on your channel. There's always one person that's going to go, that sounds like me. And being able to hear that is the difference in them going, I think I'll go talk to my doctor and see if there's something that I can do about this. And then possibly, living, and I mean that in every sense of the word, longer or happier or fuller or healthier, because they're able to hear that. So tell us about you.
Absolutely. So I am a 38-year-old guy. I've got 4 kids and I have struggled with obesity since probably about the age of, I want to say 17. Obesity and type 2 diabetes are rampant on both sides of my family. My dad actually died of he wasn't a super obese guy, but I have a hypothesis that he was very insulin resistant, pre-diabetic, died of a massive heart attack back in 2012. So I've got health issues on both sides of the family. The deck has been stacked against me, but I definitely had the mentality, not being that old, that I was kind of immune from, having to worry about something like a chronic condition like diabetes. My obesity journey really is interesting because it resonates with a lot of the things that you ladies have talked about on the podcast here. And that is that I really yo-yoed on keto. The first time I really got overweight was late in high school. Right after high school, I went on the Atkins diet, right? And I had a lot more energy back then. So I was coupling Atkins diet with cardio, and I dropped from about 225 all the way down to about 170 pounds. And I got a lot of really positive feedback, especially from family members, because there's just a kind of maybe an unhealthy idea of healthy. What is healthy, and as it relates to somebody's weight in kind of my family. So receiving all that feedback, when I put the weight back on, there was a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, and I went back to the keto diet. And this was really a cycle that repeated itself from the time that I was really 17 years old to the time that I was 37. At 36 years old, I found myself in the doctor's office. I had kidney stones and not feeling good. And when I went in to get the kidney stones looked at, I was running high sugars, and she's like, "Hey, has anybody ever told you you're diabetic?" That ultimately led to a visit with my PCP, going a little bit further, and then got the diagnosis for type 2 diabetes. Now, the interesting thing at that time was that my doctor is a major keto advocate, major keto advocate. And so he's like, "If you want to do this without medicine, you have to go on keto." And I said, "Well, to be honest with you, I've done that my whole life. And in my theory at that time, and really now even, is that if you do keto for that long on and off, it really messes with your metabolism." And I'm talking extremes, like, 10 to 20 carbs a day for 3 months, and then like binging for 6 months. That's really the roller coaster that I was on. And so I tried it. I said, I'll do it because I don't want to go on medication. And that was not my first, option that I wanted to explore. So I did keto for a whole year and started at 319 pounds. And at my year checkup, I was about 10 to 15 pounds lighter, which after a year of keto at that weight, most people would have imagined a pretty dramatic weight loss, including my doctor. The great news was my blood sugars were very well controlled. They were non-diabetic numbers, but I wasn't losing the weight. And I felt like I was at this teetering point where I was able to sustain about a year on keto. That was the longest I'd been able to sustain it. And I feel like I was able to sustain it because of that type 2 diagnosis, right? That's a very serious diagnosis to get at my age, with my children being the age they were. And I'm, replaying all the things with my dad dying younger. And so I was really serious, but I was really, really, really frustrated after that year. So at that point, my doctor said, "Okay, well, there's like 700-800 people in this program, and 4 or 5 just have not been able to lose weight on keto." And he's like, "You have a CGM that I monitor. I know you're doing the plan. Otherwise, your blood sugars would be spiking." So he put me on metformin and phentermine to lose some weight, talked to me about bariatric surgery, kind of really throwing up his hands about the whole situation. When I came back a couple months later, because the metformin made me super sick and the phentermine made me feel super bugged out, he said, "Well, if bariatric surgery isn't an option because of insurance, there are these GLP-1s. And I go,
Wow.
Well, tell me about them. And so I went home and I researched the crap out of them. And
Wow.
to the point where I saw, at least online on YouTube, which is kind of my go-to for information, there was a huge deficit of information there, of good information on GLP-1. So I did a ton of research. I was reading the trials. I was reading about tirzepatide, semaglutide, dulaglutide, liraglutide, all the utides.
Yeah.
I was really excited about what I heard about Mounjaro. So I went in shortly thereafter, got my first script for Mounjaro, and that is where my journey began last fall in November. So that kind of takes you to like at least the point that I started on Mounjaro. And Mounjaro has been a absolute game-changing medicine for me in a couple of ways. The first thing that it's giving me, and I always say Mounjaro is a gift, and it's a gift for two reasons. The first reason is that as a type 2 diabetic, I'm able to eat normal people food. I'm able to eat normal people portions, and I'm able to feel normal people full.
Yeah.
So it's given me this sense of feeling normal that type 2 diabetes had taken away from me.
Yeah.
The other gift is that it's given me pause because of the appetite suppression. Now I could get into, and I've got into on my channel, if you want to follow my journey, I've got a playlist over there, but for sake of time here, my appetite suppression has been up and down with Mounjaro, but on balance, what I just said has been true. I've been able to eat normal people food and normal people portions, feeling normal people full, but I haven't lost weight like maybe many people have. And so I'm down. I started at 312 was my starting weight on Mounjaro. As I sit here today, I'm at 280, but I've been at that 280 for like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
So
is it a set weight for you? I'm just curious because it's one for me.
It may be because I dropped down one day to 276, and then it was like boom, right back up. But the interesting thing for me is I was on 15 by that time. I titrated up really fast because of the shortages and the lower doses. So I moved from 2.5 to 15 in like 4 months. And so it was really fast titrating up. And that was my doctor's goal, was to get me to 15 as a type 2 diabetic. And I was tolerating it well with very little side effects. But in hindsight, I really think there's something to that slower titration period. After a couple months on 15, I started getting really bad migraines, which I started to ultimately, like, ruling things out, attribute it to the Mounjaro. And I ultimately stepped back. And at the end, I went all the way back to 5 milligrams. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to start over. I didn't want to start at 2.5 because it's not therapeutic and I'm diabetic and I didn't want it to be that big of a shock to my system. But I started at 5 milligrams. I did that for a month. In that month, I gained back 8 pounds. So I've now been on 7.5. I'm starting my second month of 7.5 and I'm back down to that 280. And that seems to be where my body likes to be. But I'm incorporating things now that I wasn't before. Like I've doubled my movement in the last 2 months. And I'm wearing a fitness tracker where before I wouldn't even put on my Apple Watch. So just being intentional about the amount of steps I'm taking per day. I tend to be this person who's like, I'm extreme dieting or I'm extreme exercising. Like I've gone from 1 month eating, fast food every other day to, doing 6 months of CrossFit and then right back, so I'm like one extreme or the other. And what I'm trying to let Mounjaro do for me is to not be extreme. Little incremental changes that stack up over time that are sustainable for life. And that's really the huge gift that Mounjaro has been for me.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow. Aww.
Dave, that's great.
Yeah,
I think
thank you for letting me share, by the way. I don't know that I've ever sat down and talked.
Now you can.
Yeah.
Yes.
So relatable too. So many people have been on the keto cycle off and on and off and on since I was 19,
and some people love the combination of keto and these medications too.
Absolutely.
Like we met Jamie on episode 8. And like, that's been a huge thing for him with all the weight he wants to lose. And he swears by it because for him, sugar addiction is something he's identified for him, was something he just couldn't, he couldn't fight on his own. Like he looks at it just like he looks at addiction for anything else,
Yeah. And
and
there's
that's
no
his
cookie
thing.
cutter. There's no,
Yeah, there's not.
this is
No
what
one size
works
fits
for
all.
everybody. Right.
Mm-mm. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
very cool. Well, thank you so much, Dave. We hope that you'll stay
Thank
with us.
you.
But we are
Absolutely.
going to have on Dr. Young, Dr. Melissa Young, who's an endocrinologist that we all follow on TikTok and we like a lot. I'm going to invite her in with us now. And if you want to stay and be part of the conversation, we would love that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yay.
Hey, Dr. Young.
Hi,
Thanks for
Dr.
being
Young.
here.
I've got to say something because this
Okay.
is my big reveal because I've been trying to stay incognito on TikTok and not tell anybody my real name or where I am. So this is the
Oh.
first time I'm going public.
Oh, yay. And for a lovely cause.
Thank you.
Hashtag remove the stigma. It's an excellent cause. Well,
Yes.
we're super glad to have you here.
Oh,
For
thank you for
those people
inviting me.
who are not on TikTok and do not follow you and do not know about you because you're all incognito, can you tell us a little bit about you, like your, what you do for a living, for example?
As you said, I'm an endocrinologist. I'm in solo private practice, and I'm a TikTok creator. And I initially started with just short educational things about general endocrinology, and then because of a lot of the insurance restrictions, I want to say maybe half of my videos now are also about, as one commenter called it, healthcare slander. So prior authorizations and insurance.
Healthcare slander.
Healthcare slander. Okay.
So for those of us that are not type 2 yet, and hopefully ever, many of us, I would say we would like to understand a little bit about what is the focus of an endocrinologist in terms of your specialty.
Yeah.
So endocrinology in general is the branch of internal medicine that deals with hormones. And a lot of times when people think of hormones, they think only of estrogen and testosterone, but there are dozens and dozens of different hormones in the body. So we treat disorders, pituitary, thyroid, adrenal, calcium disorders, and we do treat, abnormalities in estrogen and testosterone. And sometimes people don't understand why diabetes and obesity are part of endocrinology for studying hormones, but they are very hormone based. Insulin is a hormone, and glucagon is a hormone, and and GLP-1 is a hormone that's made by the GI tract. So the general description is that it's the branch of medicine that deals with hormones. But some endocrinologists will be very specific and only treat certain diseases. Most of us do general endocrinology and do some of everything, but because of the number of people who have diabetes and who have obesity, they make up a large proportion of the patients that we see.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You kind of touched on it a little bit already, but can you talk a little bit more about how obesity and type 2 are related and why the same therapies tend, right now at least, are working, successfully for both?
So, there are some people who want to change the name of the disease, obesity, to adiposity-based chronic disease. Because once upon a time, we thought of the fat cells as just being storage for excess calories. But now we understand that these fat cells actually secrete substances in our body that alter the way our body works. And so when people have excess adiposity, when they have diabetes, it keeps our body from using insulin efficiently. And that's what we call insulin resistance. So in order to keep the blood sugars normal, the body needs to make additional insulin. But over time, it's less and less able to do that. So, and that is when people develop type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes is one of the consequences of having excess adiposity, excess fat tissue.
Wow.
And so the medications that work to address weight also help to address type 2 diabetes. in the past, we focused mainly on just lowering blood sugar because that's what we had. We had medications that made you make more insulin, or we had insulin, or we had medications that helped you to use insulin better. This is it's only in the last several years that we've had tools to help us decrease weight in order to address all those other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how is that all related to like insulin resistance? And what does that really mean for someone?
So insulin resistance is that state in which the body isn't using insulin efficiently. So that means that the muscles aren't taking up glucose, that the liver is making extra sugar. And there's other things that insulin does in the body other than regulate sugar. It has an impact on our reproductive hormones. And that's why people who have adiposity, who have obesity, are also at high risk of developing polycystic ovarian syndrome, because they're all part of that insulin resistance spectrum.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's something that Rachel, I believe, deals with, right? PCOS, Rachel?
PCOS, insulin resistance, the whole thing. And I think it's really interesting for a lot of people. Maybe you have insight here, but I talk to so many people and they go to their doctor, whether it's an endocrinologist or whether it's their PCP, and they ask to be tested for insulin resistance. And what they get back is an A1C or a glucose test. So why is that so hard to get?
Because, how do I put this? I think that I'm not sure that changes management, right? Because if you're looking at someone who has overweight or obesity, whether or not they currently have insulin resistance, I hate to say it doesn't matter, but it kind of doesn't matter, because you're still going to treat, right, the overweight, and you're still going to treat the obesity, regardless of whether or not the insulin resistance is present now, because the risk of them developing it at some point is there. And so instead of, measuring, and offline earlier, Dave had asked about measuring HOMA-IR, which is a measure of insulin resistance. We generally don't do that on a regular basis. They do it a lot in clinical studies, but we don't do that clinically because I think the management doesn't really alter by doing those kinds of tests.
Gotcha.
Interesting. I do have a quick question, if you don't mind me jumping in.
No.
So one of the, as I understand it, one of the common, I don't want to call it a comorbidity because that's not what it is, but something that usually can commonly go hand in hand in insulin resistance with women would be PCOS, right? And on my own channel, I hear from many, many women who are struggling with PCOS, who are on some sort of GLP medicine that has helped ease that for them. I'm curious from the male side of things, are there common, like, as it relates to men's sexual health, are there common issues that go along with high insulin resistance as well, like there is PCOS in women, if that question makes sense?
Yeah, so not the insulin resistance itself, but again, that excess adiposity, the fat cells convert testosterone to estrogen. And so men who have overweight and obesity and men who have type 2 diabetes are at higher risk of developing low testosterone. A couple of reasons, partly because of that, and because that extra adiposity also affects the way the pituitary tells the testicles to make more testosterone.
Whoa.
And so weight loss can also be, I don't want to say the cure, but it can be the answer for some men's low testosterone levels.
Wow.
Excellent. I appreciate that answer.
Super interesting.
Wow.
I love knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah, we're
so happy.
Knowledge is
we are
power.
all in heaven right now
I love
because
this stuff.
yeah, we do.
We're like, oh, testosterone. Oh,
I know. Look. Ooh, low testosterone, PCOS, type 2 diabetes.
yeah.
But Dr. Young, you heard Man on the Mounjaro share his experience about trying to reverse his type 2 diabetes and how difficult it was to lose weight and enough weight and to keep it off, even eating strict keto. Why is that?
So, the weight loss industry is a multi-million-dollar industry for a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think, diet and exercise is great for weight gain prevention. Once someone has gained weight, there are metabolic and neurologic and hormonal changes that occur in our body that prevent us from losing weight and keeping it off. We evolved centuries ago to deal with famine and drought and winter. And the families that survived were the people who could hang on to energy, people who could hang on to fat. We have not re-evolved to deal with grocery stores and restaurants
Yeah.
and DoorDash.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we try to diet, when we try to restrict calories, our body says, no, 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 you're not supposed to be down there. You're supposed to be up here, and tries to bring
Right.
us back to that prior weight. And that's why people yo-yo. There are hormones that get secreted that say you should be eating, right? And it becomes very difficult to keep that weight off. So Dave is certainly not alone in that, having the weight go back and forth. And the medications, the GLP-1 receptor agonists, help to address some of those hormonal changes that have occurred.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fascinating.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah. So, okay. So I have another question. Um, we've talked about offline the importance of having like a full panel of blood work done, especially prior to beginning a GLP-1. So how important is it to have blood work done prior to starting a GLP-1? And what should a doctor look for, and what test should be like run before you start a GLP-1?
Well, it depends on the purpose of starting it. I mean, if the main purpose is for diabetes control, for type 2 diabetes, and of course, we want a hemoglobin A1C. For safety purposes, I think it's important to get a lipid panel, because although the data is not entirely clear as to whether or not the GLP-1 receptor agonists truly increase the risk of developing pancreatitis, it is in the label. And there are some animal studies that suggest that. And so if someone has very high triglycerides, that is also a risk factor for pancreatitis. So I am usually very cautious about using a GLP-1 receptor agonist in someone who has other risk factors for developing pancreatitis. You also want to make sure that their kidney function is okay, because sometimes people get dehydrated because of the nausea and the diarrhea. Sometimes people get dehydration
Yeah.
when they start a GLP-1 receptor agonist. So you want to make sure that their baseline kidney function is okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Would you mind me jumping in and asking a question about my own insulin levels?
No, you have to leave. No.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're
You gotta
fired.
go.
I'm out. Forget it.
Come back.
Yeah, please grovel. Maybe I'll come back. So the very interesting thing to me is I hadn't looked at this in months, but I need to do updated blood work. But the day that I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, my insulin level, and this is measured in a measurement called ZZ, and I don't know what to make of that. I've Googled it. I can't. Maybe Melissa can make sense of it, but it was 38.3, and the standard range it gave was 2.6 to 37.6. So I was 38.3, so higher than the high end. After a few months, I had it checked again, and this was after a few months of very strict keto, and it was 34.8. So still really high, even though I shouldn't have theoretically needed near the amount of insulin over that period of time, because I simply wasn't eating carbohydrates. Now, I've come to understand, obviously, that the liver I have fatty liver as well. And so it was in hyper mode of producing extra glucose in the blood. But I would have expected to see a bigger dip. Towards the end, about a month and a half before I went in for my year follow-up, or before, it was about a month and a half before my year follow-up would have been, I went in and got it checked again. And I had been off the wagon for about a month on keto, and that level had jumped up to 48.2.
Whoa.
And so like, these are super, super high insulin numbers. What, ultimately with tirzepatide specifically, it does such a good job bringing the sugars down, and I wear a CGM. Like, after a year, should I expect that to be much lower? I mean, these seem like crazy high insulin numbers to have.
So again, I generally don't follow insulin levels because I don't think that really adds much to therapy. But part of it depends on what your glucose is at the same time that the insulin level is drawn. Because remember, your body's going to try to make enough insulin to keep your blood sugars normal.
Sure.
And remember, Mounjaro makes you make more insulin,
Right.
right? And the
Right.
GLP-1 receptor agonist. So it's kind of hard to interpret those tests when you're on medication.
That was
Okay.
one of my
Yeah.
fears, and I actually asked my doctor about this before I went on. I said, so my insulin level is at 48.2, which is significantly higher than the standard range. And now I'm going to go on a medication that's going to encourage my body to make more insulin. And my concern was, could this not over time really tax your pancreas?
Since it only makes you make more insulin when your blood sugars are above the target range, then no. Plus, with the weight loss and your body using insulin more efficiently, eventually over time that should get better. And so, no. And actually, there's some data, not with tirzepatide, but with some of the older GLP-1 receptor agonists. There's actually data that may help to preserve beta cell function.
Interesting.
Mm. Oh, wow.
That's
interesting.
And then, go ahead,
Oh.
Jenny.
Oh, no. The only thing I was going to say is just, from a fellow type 2, that thought came through my mind also of, okay, well, this is going to help me produce more insulin, where I'm supposed to be, in my mind, I thought I was supposed to be going down, but it's like you're having to step out on faith. You're like, okay, we're going to see what this can do. And I think all of us have done that to a certain extent, because Mounjaro, tirzepatide, has only been out like a year and a month.
Mhm.
So it's still, new. We still don't have like clinical data on maintenance. And I'm about to go into maintenance. And for lack of a better term, we're just winging it.
Remember, though, by the time something gets FDA approved, they've been studying that for years. So it's just because it's been out for a little over a year doesn't mean that that there haven't been people who've been taking it for longer than that, because there's the people who are in the studies.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
And then they're still tracking people, aren't they, for like over time? Like, because
Yes.
at least that's what semaglutide.
That's what the phase 4 trials are for, right?
Yeah. And not just type 2 diabetes, but I think you all know, and you heard me say in my intro, I also have an autoimmune disease of Sjogren's syndrome. So why do GLP-1s treat symptoms of autoimmune diseases such as inflammation, and why do they treat them so well?
I'm not quite sure which symptoms you're referring to, but again, increased adiposity, the fat cells do produce inflammatory substances. So addressing the excess adiposity can help to address some of the inflammation.
Oh.
Collected shy.
I just saw a bunch of light bulbs go off, and
I know, we're like,
synchronicity.
Telling you, man.
I will say, though, that a lot of people experience less inflammation well before weight loss too.
I did.
So I think it's very interesting to see where all those studies go and how that all works out and shakes out, because the difference for some people is just super wild.
Yeah, it is wild. Like when people are like, I mean, just within a month or 2 months, you see people just go, and it's not fat. Like they just were very inflamed. Like,
And I mean, like literally on 2.5, I was on the employee bus one evening, and something said, just tap your thigh, the top of your thigh. And I did. And I said, gosh, I feel like I'm deflating. I
Yeah.
literally said that to myself. And and I know that I probably am not the only one, especially when you first began
Yeah.
Mounjaro, or when you got to a certain dosage on semaglutide,
Mhm.
semaglutide. It's like you could just feel your body
Yeah.
just deflating.
Yeah. In a good
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And it was freeing. Okay. So here is my last question, Dr. Young, because I'm just geeking out right now. Um, you you speak about, yeah, you actually speak out, about obesity on TikTok and advocate for those who suffer from the disease. Why are you such an advocate?
I am because, well, it's my job.
Right.
Patients come to me every day, but no matter, regardless of what I'm seeing them for, and so many of them struggle with weight loss, and it's and I see how important it is to them, and I hear from them how frustrated they are, and you and it's taken such a long time for the medical community to understand that this is a chronic disorder. I mean, it got its own ICD-9 code over a decade ago. And
Mhm.
even then, it was not recognized that it was a medical disorder. And not only that, but patients themselves have their own internal bias. They blame themselves. Dave, it bothered me every
Yes.
time you talked about normal weight and normal food and normal hunger.
Yeah.
Because like, why is he calling it that?
Aw.
Because I
Because it
never
feels so
felt
abnormal
normal.
to him. Yeah, because he
Yeah.
feels abnormal.
Wow.
but
Yeah.
but that bothers me that you and I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think people they blame themselves, they blame their bodies, and that acts as an additional barrier to them
Yeah.
seeking help.
Yeah.
Because when you think it's your fault, you're not
Hmm.
going to ask somebody else to help you because
Yeah.
you have to do that
Wow.
for yourself.
Yeah. That's
And
Yeah.
so true.
and I hear
We've talked
people
about that.
talking about, they talk
Yeah.
about cheating on their diet. It's not your
Mhm.
spouse. You're not cheating on your
Yeah.
husband. You can't cheat on your diet because that
Yeah.
gives it so much. It gives it a moral aspect to it.
Yes.
Yes.
And
I'm
Yes.
cheating
glad
on
that you
everyone
I'm glad
slice
that you said
is
that.
not immoral.
Yeah, I'm glad
Yeah.
you said
Wow.
that because it's actually something that I usually do say as a caveat on my own channel is that what Mounjaro is helping me do is to break this idea of there being a moral decision in my decision with my diet.
Yes.
When I say normal people food, normal people portions, normal people full, I'm more speaking to at this point the fact that I'm type 2 diabetic, and that
Mm.
in order to keep my sugars in check without the GLP-1s, I can't eat what the average person eats and expect the same results with my blood glucose. So
Yeah.
really, I'm speaking from a diabetic standpoint, but I would say that from the point that you're talking about, it is something that I struggled with pre Mounjaro, and that I'm really Mounjaro is helping me to rewire is this
Yeah.
idea that a food choice is a moral choice, and a food choice can be a moral failing when
Yeah.
it's not. And that's part of the bad wiring that's been done over decades of yo-yo dieting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I tell there's no such thing as a bad food. Otherwise, it wouldn't be
Right.
food, right? It would be poison, right? There's
Yeah.
some nutritional value to every food, some more than others, right? And
Yeah.
some things you need to minimize, but even if something is all carbs and sugar, we need a certain amount of sugar in our body. So I tell them
Yeah.
there's nothing bad, and saying that you cheated on your diet, like I said, just gives it, a moral
Yeah.
aspect I don't think should be there.
Right.
So I advocate for people, because I see the struggle,
Mhm.
and we can't help people unless they accept the help, and we can't help people unless we are willing to help. And
Yeah.
I opening
So true.
people's eyes to that, I think, is the only way to get the treatment started.
Yeah. We had an episode with Dr. Matea Rentia. It was
Oh,
last
I love
episode.
her.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Sure,
She's
podcast is
awesome.
great, by the way. Yeah. And we talked about sort of this idea of eat less, move more, and why that doesn't work for everybody. And it certainly doesn't work once you hit a certain level with your weight.
Right.
And I remembered thinking, and even you having this conversation, something that was a really big moment for me. And like, keep in mind, there's some trauma, so I get a little weepy. I'm already getting there. So, okay. So when I first joined TikTok and I just started taking these medications, and I mentioned I've struggled with obesity my whole life. I remember having a moment where I made a poor decision. That's how I put it in my head. I made a bad choice. And I felt, and I've been doing so well because this medication really, really has helped me with food addiction. It has really helped me with a lot of different things. And I reached out to Rachel, who was actually quite a big creator and didn't have to respond to me. And I said to her, I did this thing, I did this bad thing. And she said, I don't like to think during this journey, think about giving food moral worth, right? It's just food. And that in that moment was exactly what I needed to hear. And from there, many things that I have done, including this podcast, have been because of that moment of realizing that plus the medication, I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't been on the medicine, to be honest. There's something about it that just helps you see things in a different way.
Mhm.
And another thing I've realized too, talking about the child obesity thing, is that with my son, so my son's on the spectrum. He's, if you don't know a lot about autism, what you would refer to as like Asperger's. It's not what we use in the community, but it makes the most sense to people. And I don't want to put my shit on him. Do you know what I mean? But he doesn't really have problem with overeating or anything like that. But he has a lot of sensory issues with sound and texture. And so I wanted to have a conversation with him about food and being good food bad because I had heard him say it a few times. And I was like, how do I do this without putting my shit on him? And I explained it with, I don't even know why it came to me. We were going by a gas station. I said, like, here's a gas station. You can go there and you can get 4 different grades of fuel, and none of them are good or bad, but there are some that are more premium and better for your car, depending on what kind of car you have. And I explained it to him and I was like, I just wanted you to understand that, and he goes, Mom, you'd make a TikTok about that. That was pretty good. And I was like, oh, God, maybe I'm not screwing this up. But like, that's what I wanted him to understand, right? Is that, especially now as he's growing up. And then I broke it down for him because he loves McDonald's. And I was like, we can have McDonald's. It's cool. But we want to make sure that we're choosing premium fuel when we can so that we have plenty of room to have our lower grade fuel, which may not be the best for our body, but it's super yummy. And he was like, yeah, I could do that. And I was like, and maybe we think about having more protein than French fries. And he's like, I already do that. And I'm like, So I think it's interesting. Like, you have to also have all this trickle down to your kids,
Oh,
and like
absolutely.
Dave had mentioned that this was like something he had genetically and that he had dealt with as growing up. And I never really know if I'm doing the right thing, although that's sort of parenting in general, isn't it? I don't know.
You never know what you're doing.
Another podcast. Plus words of parenting.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. So I wanted to Rachel, I think you had a question actually. I don't want to take your thing that you had written.
Oh, well, before
Sorry for the
Rachel
tangent.
starts,
Sorry, I'm just paying attention, totally
but
entertained here.
but before Rachel starts,
Oh,
I
yeah.
have to go fly.
Oh,
I
the
have to go
exit.
fly. Yeah. So
Those that don't know, Janine is a flight attendant. She has to dash.
I literally have to dash, but I leave you all in the capable hands of Man on the Mounjaro and Kim and Rachel. Dr. Young, it was a pleasure. And the next time we speak, I won't have to fly, but
Yes.
I have to go.
All right. Exit. Exit.
Look,
Janine.
good exit this way. All righty.
Fly
See
safe.
you all. Dave,
Bye,
make
Janine. Oh, I hit the button too soon. Bye, Janine. That was an accident. Love you. Anyway, so
Okay.
it's really kind of, everybody here has day jobs, so it's super nice. Or in Janine's case, night job. So it's nice that she was able to give us time. But Rachel, I think you had some questions. Sorry.
Yes. So we're trying to change within our community, and we're just trying to be loud, honestly. So, even this podcast is really about taking back our testimonials, but we know that there's a ton of obesity bias, ignorance, and hate. You know, we all kind of encounter it daily. So you have spoken about this a lot in your TikToks, as of we. So we'd love to hear your perspective on that subject.
So, like you said, there's a lot of bias, and people are treated differently at work, in social situations, and even in healthcare settings because of their weight. They again, it's looked at as a personal shortcoming. You know,
Yes.
it's looked at as a matter of lack of willpower, and it is very difficult for it's been and to be honest, for a long time, that's what we all knew, right? That's we
Yeah.
thought that was correct, right?
Yes.
And it is only recently being, you know, the idea is being propagated more that that's not what it is. That, like I said, it is a chronic medical illness which has basis and it's very complex. Has basis in genetics. It can be affected by other medical conditions. And then again, once somebody has overweight or obesity, there are so many changes that have occurred in the body that keeps someone from managing it with just, as you said, calories in, calories out.
Yeah.
But people still see it as, you know, calories in, calories out. And people say, well, why do you need medication? Why can't you just exercise? You eat less,
Yeah.
do more, as they say.
Yep.
But as I said earlier, that is ineffective. People can
Yeah.
do it for a little while, but it is not sustainable. I mean, the study after study shows that people who are successful at losing weight very often find that that's temporary, and they regain the weight and often
Yeah.
additional to that.
Yeah.
And until we recognize it as a chronic medical illness, people won't be able to get the care that they need.
I think
Yeah.
too, that's a big part of like the blame and the shame and the, you know, I've hated myself since I was 8 years old because I couldn't control the size of my body.
Yeah.
And society and everything around me told me it was my fault, you know? And so
Yeah.
I feel like until that narrative changes, until society, and I'm kind of like, I don't have patience for it anymore.
Yeah.
So it's time to just call it what it is. And if you want
Yeah.
to tell me that my disease of obesity is not real or does not deserve treatment, then honestly, it's an ableist talking point and it's not
Yeah.
acceptable anymore. And
Yeah.
it has to be like, no more.
My
No
new
more.
thing is whenever someone says that, when someone says that eat less, move more, or anything like that, I say, listen, science has surpassed the statements that you are making. The world is not flat. Go read. Like I just write about or go check out this podcast that our community's made, you know, like, because it has. I mean, that's where we're at, is people are still stuck in this frankly, bullshit narrative that we've had in society forever, but also we've known about this for a while. Like scientifically, this is not for a while, but that's not sexy. And so that's what's in the news, right? What's in the news is, you know, fat and lazy, right? Your fault. That's still out there. It's only just now starting to come to pass. And that's really only because of money, in my opinion. Like, you know, there are people in the game now, like Weight Watchers, like Noom, that are like, oh, you know, and also
Let's get
these
in on this now.
medications, you know.
It's a big money machine. Obesity is a big money machine. Weight
Like I said, it's a multi-million-dollar industry.
Yeah.
You know, that's why there is Weight Watchers and Noom and Jenny Craig and Nutrisystem, because you know, before we had these medications, people would go from one to the other, you know, or they would do Weight Watchers for a while and then they'd stop and they'd have to go back.
I'm a repeat offender.
The problem doesn't go away.
And I think what you're saying there to me is what actually makes it exciting, that you see some of these companies like Weight Watchers, like Noom, embracing the science behind GLP-1s. I mean, I don't like the consolidation of anything. So the consolidation of telehealth and all that stuff is a whole different topic. But I do think, you know, one of the things that I define my journey by is, I always say, at least for me, obesity was a disease that may have started in my mind, in a sense, and was very behavior based, but became a disease of the body. And it's like the Nooms, the Weight Watchers, the fill in the blanks of the world have always treated the behavior, but they've never treated the other aspects. They've gotten better over the last few years of incorporating some psychology, but never the biology. And obesity, especially type 2 diabetes, is broken biology. And so I am at least encouraged to see them embracing that, although I know that it's only about money, and that the case is being made for it afterwards. But
it's hard to care at some point, right? Like you're almost like, you know what? I don't even care, man. If you're on board and you can change all these ding dongs and we can have better lives and live longer, be happier, fine, whatever.
Right.
You know, like
as long as it helps people, we'll let it go.
Yeah. Like at first I was like, all the trauma triggers in all the land when I was like, diet culture is getting into GLP-1s, the one thing that works for me. But then eventually I was like, you know what? I don't care. Like
Gets the word out there a little bit more to people that might not know.
Well, and
I mean,
to your point, Kim, like the only thing that we hear about GLP-1s in the media, it's all negative. It's Ozempic face, Ozempic butt, Ozempic hand.
What Ozempic finger? Have you heard that recently?
Ozempic, yes. It's whatever ridiculous nonsense they can put out that's clickbaity and negative and can cast, you know, a negative light on people using medications for weight loss. You know, at least you can look at the positive side of a Weight Watchers acquisitions of Sequence as being something that at least gets a positive element into the mainstream narrative.
Yes. Yeah, it was interesting to have that conversation with my dad, who is type 2, and go, did you know Weight Watchers is now in the Ozempic business? And he goes, really? You know, because my dad's type 2 and he is very much conservative in the way of thinking of, no, this is a diabetic medicine. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, you know, but I mean, I think that's helped people kind of be jolted out of this old way of thinking. Like, really? They spent all that money and shifted the way they're doing things because of said medication? Maybe there's something to it. Like, that's what's, I think the if that happens when they see that in the news is maybe there's something to it, you know? Drives me crazy. Anyway. Rachel, I think you had a question about.
Yeah, that's a pretty good segue into. So talking about shortages, you know, let's just talk about it. Things are continually added to the FDA list, and it feels like there's going to be, you know, another rift in the community between type 2 diabetics and people that are taking it to treat obesity or any other condition that's off label. So I think that, you know, it's important for us to all talk about it, and so just curious what your thoughts are.
I think the anger and frustration is misplaced.
Yes.
I don't think that people who have type 2 diabetes should be angry at the people who have obesity but don't yet have type 2 diabetes. Their anger should be with the manufacturer. I'm sorry, Novo North's going to hate me, but their anger should be with the manufacturer, because first of all, if they had not given it two different names, all right. If we had said, okay, we have semaglutide, this is the brand name, it is FDA approved for obesity and for type 2 diabetes, there'd be no fight. It's the same. Since you were cursing, I'm gonna go. It's the same goddamn medicine.
Yeah. No,
so there should be no fight over whose medicine it is, because it's the same medicine. They just stuck different labels on it. They put it in two different pans, but it is the same thing. And by people with type 2 diabetes saying it's theirs, minimizes the disease that obesity is.
Yes.
Right? Because even if you don't have type 2 diabetes, but you have obesity, there are other medical consequences to that. Right? I mean, it increases the risk of arthritis, restrictive lung disease, PCOS, hypertension, hyperlipidemia. And don't those things deserve treatment also?
Yeah.
It just makes no sense for them to. If there hadn't been a shortage, nobody would care. Right?
Yeah.
Even if we're using it off label. I mean, because we use Wellbutrin, bupropion, for weight loss also. Nobody cares.
Or metformin.
Right. Yeah. Or metformin. There is no medication FDA approved for PCOS. There's none.
Yeah.
We use metformin, nobody cares. We use birth control pills, nobody cares, because there is no shortage. The only reason people got mad was because Novo Nordisk didn't make enough drug.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
They're
and now Mounjaro.
passionate about it because it drives me crazy.
Crazy too. We're glad we're here.
And it seems like I even heard that one of their main problems was the auto injector. My question is, why wouldn't they just offer it in a vial? Just offer it in a vial. If people want the auto injector, fine. But
I think my problem with the vial is that the how do I put this? The accuracy with the dose is an issue, and my concern is that some people may titrate faster than they should, or take more than they should. I already have some people doing that with the pen. They're on the 0.5 of the Ozempic. They'll dial to 0.5, then they'll dial again.
Yeah.
And it can be an issue. But I think but they could have had it in the same pen as the Ozempic and not switch to the single dose of Wegovy, because the other problem with the single dose is that if you do need to back up a little bit on your dose or whatever, that you can't do that with a single dose pen.
Yeah.
When it's so much more plastic, not
that too
about
yeah.
that, but
The
just about,
environment.
like, you need more of the pins to make it happen.
Yes.
Yeah. It's stupid. I like the Ozempic pen because I've done, I've tried all the things in the land, and the Ozempic pen, I like that because when I did go up to 2 milligrams on Ozempic, it was way too much for me. I could only get like 800 calories a day. And I called my doctor. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And she's like, we're going down. And so we went down because we had Ozempic and that was what was approved. We did 1.7. So we did the titrate right down to 1.7 because that matches the Wegovy dose, right? And that worked great. And then I did that and then eventually went to the 2. And then now I'm 2.4 of Wegovy. But, I had to go as my body was ready, right? Not just because, there's more weight loss at the higher dose. You know what I mean? But yeah, I do wish that they would get their shit together and just do one pen, because I feel like it would be better for the environment. They might actually fix the manufacturer's stupid issue, Yeah.
My 2 cents, at least for the Mounjaro, is that I think that Eli Lilly is going to keep Mounjaro.
Yeah.
They currently have, what's that?
That's the word on the street, that they're going to keep it Mounjaro.
I think that's what we want.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it creates manufacturing efficiencies for Lilly, and like Lilly as a company they're really under the gun because this year their COVID medications expired and they're trying to replace all that revenue for their investors. And they're a really highly valued company. Some would say overvalued. So they have to deliver strong with Mounjaro. That's what all their chips are on the table with Mounjaro. Plus they have Retatatride coming down the pike as a weight loss medication, which will be a whole new medicine with better results, it looks like, and it'll be their flagship in the future. But
it would be super good if we could talk about that.
Such a good
segue, Dave. Do you know much about the Retatrutide? Like, is it because I know it like helps with like the liver, but how is it? How different is it? Like, and
so Retatatride is very on my channel I call it Retatrutide. So Retatrutide is very similar to Mounjaro, where it acts on the GLP-1 and it also acts on the GIP, but Retatrutide also acts on the glucagon receptors. And it's not the first medication to try. There was another one that maybe Pfizer tried. I can't remember who the other pharmaceutical company was. They could not get it through trials because of big issues with tachycardia. So the big news on this is it's a triple acting medication, and that they've been able to do it thus far through phase 2, and now they're in phase 3 without the tachycardia issues. And I can't remember the percentages of weight loss that they were seeing with it, but it was significantly higher than Mounjaro, tirzepatide. So, and that is on track for approval probably about a year, I would guess, after Mounjaro is approved for weight loss.
And is that specifically for type 2, or are they trying to target?
I believe that it's at a minimum. It's for obesity, the obesity indication, because ironically enough, what I heard, and it may be for type 2 diabetes too, they are doing type 2 diabetes testing, but what they are finding so far is that tirzepatide is actually superior to retatrutide in glucose control, where retatrutide is superior in weight loss. And I don't know why. I don't know enough about this stuff to hazard a guess why, but it doesn't. There's something about the GIP. I think bodies respond differently to it, and I don't know how, what the mechanism, the different.
Let's ask Dr. Young. We happen to have a doctor here. Why we're talking.
I'll be honest with you. I think he knows more than I do about this. He's really looked at it. But I mean, I can only hypothesize that, each molecule is different. And so the proportion that it affects the GLP-1 receptor agonist may be different than the proportion that it affects the GIP-1 and so on. So it may be better for weight loss and not so much the insulin secretion and things like that. And that might be why.
Yeah, I think ultimately we'll see it as a weight loss medication. Otherwise, they're just like chasing one drug with the other. Like they got to get their money back on Mounjaro. So I think ultimately their focus is with retatrutide being a weight loss, but there were some diabetes trials going. It seemed like Mounjaro was still edging it out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of like the fact that I've sort of said, like, we're not even at the beginning of this stuff. Like we're in the middle, right? Like I think there's just going to be more and more things coming down the way, which is why I'm like, you know what? That's a job for future Kim, if I'm going to be on this forever or not. Like, I'm just going to do this for now. We'll see how it goes, But the one thing that I do think our community is going through quite a bit right now, with back to the Mounjaro thing, is the fact that the coupon that everybody calls the OG coupon in our community is set to expire at the end of the month. If you don't have insurance coverage for Mounjaro, if you don't have type 2, right? Because they've changed those cards. We've talked about that quite a bit. Right. But we are seeing a lot of things in our community of people taking a lot of risk. And the one thing that I've tried to point out by the different doctors that we have on here, or if they have red flags for if you're going to choose to do the compound route. And many doctors have shared, if it looks like this, or it says like this, or it sounds like this, don't do it, And I would love, as we're trying to compile that for our community, for things to look for that were probably not safe. If you have anything to share, that would be really helpful.
I mean, the problem with the compounded semaglutide, and I don't like when people say compounded Ozempic, because it's not compounded Ozempic, because it's a different form of semaglutide, one that is not FDA approved for use for therapy, and the solution that they want to dilute is not the same as Ozempic. And so to just give someone a vial of semaglutide salt and say dilute it with sterile water and inject, that seems very unsafe to me. So I would recommend, as frustrating as it is to not be able to get, Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro due to shortages, I really highly discourage people from using the compounded substance.
If I can just dovetail on that too, in everything that I've read about, I'll call them the name brands, Mounjaro and Ozempic, is that what the magic, these are polypeptides. These are long chain amino acids. They have been lipidized by these pharmaceutical companies to extend the half-life of the medication so that they can be a once weekly injection. Like you go back to liraglutide, Saxenda, and Victoza, which are daily injection. That's because the half-life of peptides is typically very short. And so Novo and Lilly have found a way to lipidize these polypeptides so that you only have to take them once a week. Otherwise, without the lipidization, the half-life is much shorter. We're measuring that in hours and not days. And so I think one of the interesting things that I don't hear any of the prescribers that are prescribing compounds on, and I'm not shooing people away from them, I'm just asking questions, is that
we have to. That's what this is about.
That lipidization is part of what they hold patents on. And so I don't think you're getting that lipidization with these salt versions of these polypeptides. And so I think the half-life's a lot quicker. So I think you're getting, in other words, you're getting if you take the maybe the analogy of taking a normal tablet pill that dissolves and you metabolize very quickly versus an extended release, like that's the difference. You get it all at once. Boom. Whoa. and then it's over. Where with the extended release, you get it like a more even output of the medication. I don't think people are getting that with the compounds. And so I'm not sure the dosing is correct. Perhaps it should be a lower dose taken more frequently. I don't know. This is just what I'm positing.
Well, I think that's the problem though, Dave, is that we don't know, right? Like,
I think it's a huge
that's why
problem.
it's scary is there's just not enough information out there. We really don't know. And like what I have seen in the past 2 weeks, but especially this past week of what people are taking, because, and y'all know, if you watch the show, I am so scared for our community because the problem is they finally found out they had a disease. The problem is there finally is medication to treat it, and now somebody's taken it away. And the reason they're taking it away is because of insurance companies coming in and saying we don't want to pay for it, for drug companies coming in and saying we're going to lower the price, right? And now everybody's sending out money and threatening doctors and saying don't prescribe these off-label for your patients, even though that is a proven way to treat said diseases, right? There's peer-reviewed articles, there's studies, like we have tons of data on these things, and they continue to do this, and people are desperate. That's the situation that we're in. So they're going to do it. And so if they're going to do it, and I know that, I would rather us put them in a situation where they have as much knowledge as possible, right? So what you just said, Dave, it's really important, right? For them to consider, it's a consideration, right? Or, hey, if it says research grade on it, maybe don't do it. If it says not for human consumption, maybe don't do that. Or like, really think about that. If you're having to mix it up in your fucking house, maybe that's not something that you do, because there are people that go to school to know how to do that. There would not be certifications and degrees for people that could just do it at home because it looks simple. And I feel like we have to have something out there where people know, look, we ain't saying do it, but we're saying definitely don't do this.
There are plenty of places, plenty of ways to get compounded medication that does not involve kitchen science. And they don't all involve semaglutide salts also. So
that's an important distinction to make too. I think that, and I've done a couple videos on this, is that compound medications from sterile compound pharmacies with a doctor's prescription are not the same as these bootleg tirzepatide, bootleg semaglutide ads that you're seeing all over social media.
Research grade.
Same thing. Research grade, not for human consumption. These are not the same as compounded medications.
No. Yeah, I'm the same. And like, that's the thing too, is I do recognize with me and treating my obesity and other things that I have, and you may not watch the show, but I have horrible, debilitating, obsessive anxiety. Since I started this medication, it's gone. It turned off like a switch. I don't know how I even functioned before. I functioned highly. I don't know how, but I did. But on the inside, I felt like I was just living in my brain in a hurricane. I just thought that was what it was like. I just thought that's who I am and that's what it's like. But now I live in like the eye of my storm, So I'm still myself, but I'm a much more chill. Before this, I had no chill, And so, but I think about the way my mind was and what torture that was, and I can't go back. And I know that's what people are feeling. And so they don't have a lot of money. They don't have maybe $500 to buy the best, what maybe is compounded. It's probably the most safe. They're spending $200 and taking a risk and mixing shit in their kitchen. And while I wouldn't do that, I also have a little more disposable income than the average person. Not a lot. I ain't rich or nothing. And I am spending a lot on this podcast. But, for the most part, I have a little bit extra that I would go for the 500, whatever, as opposed to the 100 scary thing. But I would go for something because I know me. I can't go back, and I know.
That's such an important point, Kim, to make, just because so many people from the outside looking in are seeing it as, well, she wants to get skinny, she wants to lose weight. She wants to look better, but
way more than the weight.
It's so much more than that. It is very physical, you mentioned, Dave, that, it is treating our body and our physiology. And I just feel like it's very obvious that the mental health aspect of this is not just mental health. It's the physiology affecting my mental health, and the medication is treating it.
Yes.
And it is so much more than this person is desperate to lose weight. I cannot go back either.
Yeah.
Like the change is outrageous in so many of our mental health related to BED and just
Oh, we're not on TikTok. We can say
self-hatred
here.
and, you know, all of it encompassed, all of it rolled in together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't do that anymore either. I've been binge-free for almost a year now. I feel control of my life. I feel in control of my choices. And I can't go back. But
330
if I was
days.
going to make the choice, and I think this is where we get in the situation where if I was going to make the choice, I would likely go through my doctor that I know it chooses a compound pharmacy, that I am getting it directly from that compound pharmacy, not my doctor. You know, he makes the prescription and he said, I'll put my name on the line for this because I think this is the one that's the safe. Now, that being said, we don't know that nothing's fail safe, especially in this situation. But if I had to take the risk, those are the steps that I would probably take, you know? But I hope I never have to. But unfortunately, we are in with our community and with the scarcity of these medications, with the cost of these medications, and with the, you know, recent pulling of prior authorizations and auditing of prior authorizations from the pharmacy benefit managers, we're there.
Have you
more
seen
people than not, you know,
more people than
are gonna have to make a decision.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm curious if anyone has seen, I just came across this the other day, and I happen to be a patient of OptumRx, where starting in August, they are auditing the medical records of anybody who is attempting to fill a GLP.
Yeah. Actually, Dr. Michael Albert, if you don't follow him, he was on our first episode and he posted about that. He's like, let me let you know what's coming, you know? And then he gets the scary letters too about like, not only will we audit you, but like, we will report you to the boards and we will this and that. Or we will possibly report to law enforcement. Like that's the shit that PBMs are sending out right now to our doctors.
And we have to, the community, I don't know how, but we have to push back against that.
It's ridiculous. What other disease gets that kind of reaction?
We use other medications off label, and again, like I said, nobody's cared. Now, the only thing I'll say, if somebody lied on a prior authorization, that's a problem, right?
Yes, lying, of course.
Diabetes when they don't, that's a problem. If you said that I want them on it for obesity, then that should be okay. That shouldn't be a problem because, like I said, we use things off label all the time, and that is not a punishable offense.
Yeah,
but
and not illegal.
Lying in a medical record, that's a punishable offense.
Right. Sure.
Well, and then we did have someone on our last show too, who her doctor, because she was young and because she, you know, I don't even want to say fit because she was very fit, like lots of fitness. She exercised a lot, you know, those kinds of things. But she had was this like a 6.7 her A1C is, but her doctor was like, I don't want to give you that diagnosis because it will affect things for you for insurance in the future. But it was the difference in her getting her medication or not. For Mounjaro, for her getting her prior authorization because she had, you know, a 6.7. So, you know, it's like stuff like that. Sometimes you have to say it, like, you know,
right. Like, and that would have been a pre-ACA. That would have been a big deal to send somebody off with a chronic diagnosis. Post-ACA, I don't see what the big deal is.
Right.
Yeah.
If anything, it helps her get things that she needs.
Yeah. But it took a different doctor that was a specialist, you know, as opposed to a general, which how can they know everything? They're general. Like, I mean, you can't, that's why we have specialists, right?
Primary care doctors, they need to know too much about too many things. And medicine has grown so much in the last few decades that they just can't.
Yes. No, there's no way. And like, that's something Dr. Mateo and Tia mentioned is like, they're not going to know about this, like she calls it, I think, like fact-based science or fact-based medicine or something like that. Something about like database, fact-based medicine. And because she's like, but I know about the studies and the things and the examples and this, and therefore, because I know that, because that's my focus, I can then make changes accordingly. Or when my patient comes in and says blank, blank, and blank, I can then apply that knowledge that I have. But there's no way that a general doctor can do that. They don't have the time, you know, I mean, some of them can, you know, I don't know, but for the most part, it seems like it's very, very difficult for them to know all the things. That's why we have specialists. Mm-hmm. You know, I used to hate that we had specialists, but I'm glad that we do. All right. Well, I feel like I've gone through a lot of the questions. Is there anything anybody, I know Dave, you're our special guest. So if you have any more questions, and of course, Dr. Young, if there's anything you wanted to share.
I don't think that I have any other questions. I have lots and lots and lots of thoughts and questions that I would love to sit down and wrap with an endocrinologist about. I think that one of the one of the big things I'm interested to see in these studies over time on these GLP-1 RAs is just how the weight loss corresponds to insulin sensitivity specifically.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about just type 2 diabetes, but I'm talking about like there's a spectrum within type 2 diabetes. There's a spectrum within insulin resistance that is significant. And I really think that there's a lot of people who get frustrated that are engaged in social media, engaged in this community, and they look at it and they go, well, I haven't lost, I've lost 10 pounds in 3 months, and this person's lost 125 in 3 months. And they start to get into this comparison game where I think it would be helpful for people to be able to drill down and understand what it is about their biology that makes it so, because I think they get back into that trap of they failed morally somehow along the way.
Yeah.
And so I'll be interested to see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, people really need to stop comparing themselves to other people, because everybody's body is different. Your genes are different. Your depending on how old you were when you started on your journey and when you started attempting to lose weight, all of those will have an impact. What other medical conditions you have, and so and not everybody responds to the same medication the same way. I mean, I've had people who tolerate titrating up on Mounjaro quickly and they do great. I have some people they get the 2 doses of 2.5, they're out. They can't take it. And some people wanted to go on Mounjaro because they heard how wonderful it was, and then they felt like they didn't do well and they switched to Ozempic and did better with that. I have people who did it the other way around. So everybody's response to medications, to certain foods, to physical activity is different. And and when people compare themselves, my patients all the time complain, my husband and I started the same diet, it's not fair, he lost more weight. I'm like, no, it's not fair. But that's life. I mean, and you can't compare yourself to him.
Yes, totally. I definitely can't. My husband loses weight way faster than me. It pisses me off. But you're right. Like I can't compare. And that's one thing I had like this. I have these, I swear to God, my brain just fires different on this medicine, or fires like it should, if you will. I don't know, on all cylinders or something. I don't know.
Don't say normal.
But I didn't. I said on all cylinders, like it should. Whatever should equals, right? But like, I had this moment where I was like, why do we look at bodies as one size fits all? We know that is not a thing. Why do we even have it? It doesn't, like, that isn't even real for anything. We don't look at how can we apply one size fits all to something as complicated as one, a body, and two, a body with obesity, which is one of the most complicated diseases we've learned about recently. And so it's like, I just don't even, so you telling somebody to eat less and move more and that will solve all of their problems is just asinine. Like it makes no sense, because that would make the assumption that everybody is the same, and it just
worked. Nobody would be obese. Nobody would have obesity.
40% of America would not be obese. Like,
because I don't think there's a single person with obesity who hasn't tried to lose weight.
Yes.
And you certainly don't ask for a medication without having tried at some point and gotten to the point where you decide, I just need pharmacologic help.
Yes.
So if eat less, move more work, we wouldn't need medications, right? Because we don't just be able to do it.
At all. Wouldn't even all, because we'd never become type 2 and we'd never, we'd never have PCOS and, like just absolutely ridiculous.
When people say that that's all you have to do, I'm like, no, you don't know.
The earth is not flat. Go read. All right. Well, I know we've taken lots of everybody's time. And so I'm so thankful that everybody stayed. And even though Janine had to exit stage right, like I'm super glad that she was able to join us as well. And thank you so much to Rachel for being our special guest host today and filling in for Kat while she's doing butt stuff. On what was the stairs? She's in France and the stairs are called like Homer's Odyssey or something. So she's doing butt stuff with Homer, she said. So, I think that's what, I don't know. Crazy. Anyway. All right. Well, I will thank you two for coming. I'll go ahead and exit you out. I know it seems a little weird, but just know I'm loving you while I'm doing it. And thank you so much for coming and joining us
Thank
today and
you.
helping us educate and advocate around obesity, especially thank you so much for Dave for sharing your story. And thank you so much, Dr. Young, for helping us really validate those experiences, because that is a lot of people look at us as kind of fat, whiny people. I mean, frankly, they do. And having someone go, no, science makes sense is a big deal. And it will help somebody else out there go, oh, Dave sounds like me.
Yeah.
Dr. Young said facts. Maybe I should talk to my doctor. So putting those two together, that's what we hope. And that's what we're seeing from comments that we get from people. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank
yes,
you.
Of course. Hey, Rach.
Hi.
It's just us. And
us gals.
At least, I don't know, 3,000 more people that watch us and listen to us.
Really?
Yeah,
that's
if you
amazing.
Count
those 3,000 should definitely share the podcast.
Yeah, share it out. Yeah, we're getting there. I mean, it's it grows by about 100 every week, 100 to 200. So yeah. So I we wanted to grow obviously more. But
every single one of those people.
I am on a campaign right now to get Rosie to love our podcast. I just want her to be like, hey, this is a good podcast. Go watch it. Because then more people be like, oh, because I'm a small creator. People don't know me. You know what I mean? So, it's about having other people share on their networks and other people realize that this is a good place to learn and a safe place to be.
And especially those of us that know what this feels like.
Yes.
We should feel the responsibility to share, because we know what it feels like to be on the other side. And if every single one of them matters, and every single one of them deserves to know that it's not their fault. They deserve to feel this feeling of relief. They deserve everything that we've experienced.
Yes. And your and I's journeys have been very similar in a lot of ways. And that's why I say, if you have a place where you don't feel accepted, or you do feel like your doctors have told you it's not your fault, or whatever it may be, just know that there is a place. We do have people that come, to TikTok and are part of our community. And it is a very accepting, and supportive. Loving and supportive community, because we all get it. It's we all just get it. And it's
and
you
we
said,
want
Rachel,
it for everybody else.
We want it for everyone. Yes.
We want it for you.
But we're not going to come at you. We're not like that there. It is for sure and we share knowledge freely. We don't gate things. Well, maybe some people do. We don't, and so come there and just know, you do have a place, you have a hub. You can come to the plus sides. You can come to, myself, Rachel, anybody that's been on the show on TikTok and follow us, and we're always there. So I don't know about you, but it's been a tremendous amount of healing for me, the community, and just moments like that, where you and I had, and you were like, well, there's actually no good for, and that's where it's trickled out, Rachel, that listen, you and I had a conversation with me in the midst of all my stuff, right? And you said that to me. And even though if you think about that logically, sure, people think about that, but in that moment I heard it. And now I have a podcast about obesity when I never even did lives before. The trickle effect of what this medication can do and what your words can matter to other people, and the things that can come from that are really, really big,
1,000%.
So that's why we have to be careful with the things that we say, and try to do as much positive as possible, because it's just so important. But now look what's happened. And because of the podcast, Rachel, we have people, I get messages constantly that people say it's a safe place. I can learn there. I saw my doctor. I feel so much better. I'm so glad I found this. And it's because we're, going to other mediums and stuff, and people needed to hear this. So keep saying the things that you say, because they've made all the difference in my life,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody deserves it.
Yes, I do. Yeah. You deserve to have your disease treated. Go see your doctor, Yeah. It's hard though.
For yourself.
You have to.
For yourself.
Yeah. I did say recently I went to my I was going to try to figure out what's going with the celiac stuff. So I went to him and I was talking to him about the tests and the things that come out. And he goes, well, sure. Cause you have to push your doctors sometime to do blank, blank, and blank. And I went, push. Because I was that's why I'm here, said specialist. That's why we're here talking about it.
Right.
you know? And like, it was super awkward, but like, he kind of smiled and we went, and guess what? He's doing the
Yeah,
extra things that need to be done,
absolutely.
you know? So you do, but you do have to have, and sometimes to be able to, in my experience so far, to be able to feel comfortable advocating for yourself, you need as much knowledge as possible,
Right.
you know, and not just based on your blood work, but based on your life, because you know your body best, you know?
Yeah.
And if you can come to the plus sides and go to TikTok and whatever and learn, at least you have something to go to the doctor with. They don't know everything, you know, and they certainly
Right.
don't know you. So, you know, definitely go with like your arsenal full of like all the information. And we hope that you've been able to get that here with us tonight. And then all of the other, you know, 10 episodes before this or 11 episodes before this.
Yes.
So thank you so much. We usually do classic sign-offs, but I feel like you and I have the same one, which is you're not alone
You're
and
not alone. And it's
it's
not your
not
fault.
your fault. Yes. Thanks so much, everybody. We will see you next week. Bye.